What is going on, everybody? Shwayze here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about 6 things that I love and 5 things I kind of hate about the 2023 Nissan Altima. Okay, so talking about the newly facelifted 2023 Nissan Altima. Now, I do want to apologize if the car looks a little bit dirty and we're in this kind of dark, tunnely parking lot because it is raining today and there's this really bad weather, so I apologize in advance for the lack of lighting, but I did want to still make this video because I think it's important to talk about the things I love and kind of hate, or maybe room for improvement for a vehicle like this, because it's important information to know if you're considering picking up one of these vehicles as your next car. So without further ado, let's get started with the first thing that I love about the Nissan Altima. And in no particular order, that has to do with the good-looking front end styling of the newly facelifted 2023 Altima. I think they did a really good job with this facelift. You have the updated V-Motion grille, you have some kind of darkened chrome or blacked out chrome, you could say, and then you do get LED headlights as standard, and they do actually look really good. Let me turn them on, show you what that looks like, and then the daytime running light looks really good as well. You do have the updated Nissan badging. I like the piano black plastic. You have the SR badging, and especially in this deep blue pearl color, it looks really good. There's another look with the headlights on and the daytime running lights on as well, and it's just a very attractive looking front end. It looks sporty, looks kind of muscular and aggressive, and I think Nissan did a great job with this. Now, the back end has kind of remained unchanged, and it's not my favorite part of the car, but the front end styling definitely has to be one of my favorite parts of the new Nissan Altima. Speaking of style, I also love the stylish interior. I mean, take a look at this contrast stitching with this leather padding upholstery throughout the entire door panel. Even this section over here is soft touch. You do have like a fake aluminum look to it, but it looks really nice in this application. And then coming in, look at these seats. They have this kind of contrast color to them, this orangey red color inside of the perforation on the seats. And then you do have the contrast stitching over here as well. And going up on the seat as well, even these little side stitchings over here on the side of the seat look good. And then hopping in, it looks really, really nice on the interior. They did facelift the interior as well with this 2023 model, and the biggest improvement here is this big center screen, which we'll talk about in just a second. But even the switch gear over here, this feels really nice in the hands. It doesn't feel cheap by any means. It's kind of got an aluminum bezel to it. And then the buttons over here don't feel cheap either. They have a little bit of resistance to them, and overall just a really nice looking interior cabin. Let me show you what that kind of lit up looks like, and same with the instrument gauge cluster. Just very stylish, very designer, almost gives you kind of a Mazda-ish look to it on the interior in a way. You've even got some more of that contrast stitching over here on this leather shift knob, and then even some more of that stitching over here on the side of the center arm console. And this is actually softly padded too, so you can rest your leg or knee on here and not feel like it's just hard touch plastic all the way. Take a look at the stitching over here on the armrest, and then the rear seats are no exception either. You still have that contrast stitching over here on the armrest, and then coming inside, same with the seats. You have that multicolored seat and even the contrast stitching over here on the headrest. Now, for the second thing I love about the 2023 Altima, we have to talk about the seats. And I already discussed the styling portion of it, but I'm talking about how comfortable these seats are to sit in, especially for longer trips. Now, Nissan calls this the zero gravity seats, and they've used that same type of lingo for the Infinity seats that I've sat in the past, but these are almost the next level because they're extremely cushy. I mean, you can even tell when I'm pushing on it with my hand, it's almost like a memory foam type of material. It's really, really comfortable, really soft. It kind of hugs your body. It's almost like you're sitting on a couch and not a car seat cushion. So Nissan does a really good job on lowering fatigue when you're taking this vehicle on longer road trips because they've ergonomically designed these seats to be more comfortable than your average car. Now, for the third thing I love about this vehicle has to do with the updated infotainment screen. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is a 12.3-inch screen, and this is all new for the 2023 Altima. Now, it's standard for this SR VC-Turbo, but if you get the lower trim levels, it's either an option or you're going to have to deal with a smaller screen. So I would definitely recommend it because this thing is impressive. And in fact, this is the largest infotainment screen you can get in a mid-size sedan, aside from the upcoming 2023 Honda Accord, where you can actually match the 12.3-inch screen. But other than that, the Toyota, the Hyundais, they don't have a screen this large, and it is very impressive. impressive. What I really like about it is this is actually the updated software that Nissan has as well. And you have kind of this home screen where you have your quick access widgets, and you can actually add additional widgets as well. So I added this little clock over here, and you've got a couple different options here where you can change the way it looks. You could do audio widgets, you could do maps and Sirius XM, and just so many different options here. I really like that home button. And another thing I really like about it is the quick access controls are over here on the left-hand side. So you don't have to kind of reach across to reach over here on the right-hand side to the passenger side like a lot of other automakers make it. This makes it very easy for the driver to just let go of the steering wheel and quickly access where they want to go. And the software is very snappy. I know some other people have said it's a little bit on the slower end, but I gotta say, this is quicker than the previous software I tested in like the Mitsubishi Outlander, which also uses Nissan software, along with some of the other Infiniti products I've used. I mean, this is a very quick to respond system. I mean, there's not really a lag. It's a really good system overall. Also, I do like that you can pull up your lowest gas prices. So it tells me right now that Sam's Club, which is, you know, a few miles away, has the lowest gas in the area, and you can actually filter for that. So, you know, for those of you that are conscious of that, which I think most of us are in today's market, that is nice to have. So the software is really useful. You got Alexa connectivity as well. And it's just a massive screen. As you saw earlier, when I click Android Auto, which is wireless, by the way, it takes up the full screen. A lot of times the modern automakers make Android Auto and Apple CarPlay maybe 2/3 of the screen, whereas this takes up the entire amount. And you do have a 360-degree camera as well. Now, it's not the best quality, but it still is nice that a vehicle at this price point and being a mid-size entry-level sedan does have that as an option. So I really like the improvement here. This software is actually better than the QX80 that I reviewed recently, which is a much more expensive vehicle. Now, for the fourth thing I love about the Nissan, it has to do with its safety features. So by pushing this button, you activate your Pro Pilot Assist, which is pretty much a full suite of safety features where you can essentially drive almost hands-free on the highway. What this vehicle will do is, as long as your hand is on the steering wheel and just giving a little bit of resistance, this vehicle will keep you centered in the lane. It's not a new technology by any means, but not all automakers are doing that. As an example, the QX80 I reviewed didn't even have this lane centering option. And it does a pretty good job at that. Even when you're like cornering or doing anything like that on the freeway at highway speeds, this thing will actually keep you centered in the middle of the lane. And it has the adaptive cruise control where you will actually maintain the same amount of distance to the vehicle in front of you. And you can change that distance by pushing this button over here on the steering wheel. Also, Nissan says this is one of the only vehicles on the market that can see two cars in front of you and kind of predict what's going to happen on the road. I'm not really quite sure how they do that. I'm not sure if that's a marketing gimmick or if it's actually functional, but this vehicle does have kind of emergency braking and pedestrian detection and all those types of safety features, along with blind spot monitoring over here in the A-pillar. The only thing is missing here is full self-driving, where you can actually let go of the steering wheel, but very few auto manufacturers have that, and those have to be on designated roads, whereas this feature can be on any road. Now, for the fifth thing I love about the Nissan Altima, really has to do with how quiet the cabin is. For being a mid-size entry-level sedan, this thing has probably the same amount of sound deadening that I would experience from like a luxury vehicle. Not only is this vehicle pretty soft when you're driving down the road, but since mine is the SR VC-Turbo, it has the sport suspension, so it's not the softest. But in terms of road noise, it actually does insulate you very well. That's something I immediately noticed driving in this vehicle, is just how composed and quiet it is inside the cabin, kind of separating you from everything that's going on outside. I think Nissan did a great job with that, and I've noticed that they've carried that over, obviously, to their Infiniti products as well, because they do make some really quiet cabins on the interior. Okay, now the next thing I love about this vehicle is probably on the top of my list as the thing I love the most, and it was also the biggest surprise when I sat down in this car for the first time. And that has to do with the powertrain and the performance in general. It's actually a lot quicker and more fun to drive than I expected. And this thing is by no means a sports car or, you know, a Dodge Challenger Hellcat or anything like that, but I think it's the appropriate amount of power for a vehicle of this size. And dare I say, it's actually a fun amount of power. This thing has about 248 horsepower, and this thing is actually pretty quick. I just put it into its sport mode, and let's do a quick little acceleration. Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of torque. Now, there is a delay, and that's kind of standard amongst any turbocharged engine. This isn't really going to out-accelerate any fast car, but once you get it into the higher RPM range, this thing has quite a bit of torque and boost to be able to kind of push you a little bit back into the driver's seat. I have never felt like this thing didn't have enough passing power when accelerating on the freeway. And I will say, even though I personally hate CVT engines, I think if I have to have a CVT engine, this is the one I would want because it actually shifts pretty quickly. And what's funny is, you know, CVTs don't even have gears. They're just one single gear, but this thing gives you that simulated feel as if it does have 8 gears. Like here, I put it into manual mode. Yeah, and see, it shifts pretty quickly and also downshifts pretty quickly as well. I mean, this thing actually shifts quicker than some traditional automatic transmissions out there. And it's kind of silly because this thing doesn't have any gears, but it does add to the theatrics of driving this sport version of the Altima. The one complaint I have about the CVT is it kind of drones when you're accelerating. It doesn't sound good. Neither does the engine either. So that's the one downside. But other than that, this is plenty of power to have fun on the road and not spend an arm and a leg on a vehicle. I mean, this is sub $40,000 and you have a decently fun vehicle to drive and still be able to carry tons of passengers in the back. Okay, now let's talk about the 5 things that I hate about the Nissan Altima. What I mean is, this is some things that could be improved for the next generation model, or things that you might want to consider if you're looking at purchasing this car, because maybe you'll agree with me, or maybe it's just something that you're more prepared for when you get one of these in your driveway. So without further ado, let's start with the first thing in no particular order that I hate about the Nissan Altima. Okay, the first thing that I will complain about is the fact that this SR VC-Turbo, which has the 2-liter variable compression engine that produces about 248 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in about 5.8 seconds, a very impressive engine. The fact that this engine in particular and this trim level does not come with an all-wheel drive option. And that's frustrating because Nissan does offer all-wheel drive on 3 of their trim levels for the Altima, but for some reason they don't offer it with this specific engine, which is a shame because this engine is the fun one. This is the one that I would recommend buying if you're looking at getting an Altima. Even though it is a little bit more expensive, it is worth it because this is a fun engine to drive, like I mentioned in the things that I love about this car. But unfortunately, if you live in a climate like this where it rains or snows pretty often, or you just want a little bit more security when you're driving in such conditions, you would like to have an all-wheel drive setup. And unfortunately, you just can't get that with this SR VC-Turbo. Now, Toyota's closest competitor, the V6 Camry, also doesn't come with all-wheel drive. So I think it would have been a competitive advantage for the Nissan Altima SR VC-Turbo to come with all-wheel drive, especially considering the Nissan already has that architecture in the Altima, just on different trim levels. Okay, now the second thing that I hate about the Altima, especially with this VC-Turbo, is the fact that you can only get one transmission option on the Altima, regardless of what engine or trim level you get, and that is a Xtronic CVT transmission, a continuously variable transmission. If you guys don't know what a CVT is, I'd recommend looking it up, but it's essentially the same type of transmission you would have in like an ATV, where you only have one gear and it uses a bunch of different pulleys to transmit the power. So that is what this vehicle has, and a lot of vehicles, especially, you know, compact or mid-sized sedans that are looking for the best fuel economy, most of them have CVTs. Now, the complaint I have with that is both Toyota and Honda have CVT transmissions in their vehicles, but their top-of-the-line engines, which we're talking the V6 Camry and the 2-liter turbocharged Honda Accord, both of those offer a conventional torque converter automatic, which is the automatic transmission that's been around for years, where it actually shifts gears as you're accelerating. And the benefit to that transmission is it just sounds better, it accelerates quicker, it feels better, it's more responsive, and at the sacrifice of fuel economy, you do get a better transmission overall from a driver's standpoint. Unfortunately, you do not have that as an option on the Altima SR VC-Turbo, and I wish they included a separate transmission for this specific engine, because I get that they're trying to get the best fuel economy, and that's fantastic because this thing does get about 29 combined mpg, which is really impressive for a 2-liter turbocharged engine, but I would have rather had maybe 26 mpg and a conventional transmission to make this car that much more fun. The 0 to 60 of this is 5.8 compared to the low 5s for the Camry and the mid 5s for the Accord, and I think that has to do with the fact that they have conventional automatic transmission. I've driven in much worse CVT transmissions before, and this one is definitely not that bad. But that being said, even the best CVT transmission isn't going to compare as well as a traditional torque converter automatic. Now, for the third thing that I hate is kind of silly, but also kind of important. That is the fact that this vehicle, which has an MSRP of around $36,000, pretty much has absolutely no window tint. I mean, take a look at that. This makes it look like it's a more basic trim level, as if this is the entry-level Altima, and yet this is the most expensive Altima you can get. And I don't really understand why they didn't include some sort of window tinting. I mean, yes, you can always do it aftermarket, but this is like one of those silly things where they should have just done it from the factory. And maybe they did, because maybe this is slightly tinted, but this is not nearly as close as you need it to be, because inside it feels like you're in a fishbowl. It's very easy to see inside of the vehicle. When it's hot outside, it's going to be warmer on the interior because there's no window tint. And just from a privacy standpoint, I wish they would have included that. I mean, even my Ford Bronco from the factory came with window tint, and that is actually a pretty bare bones vehicle, so I don't really understand why they didn't include this. Now, for the fourth thing I kind of hate, and even though I said I love the comfort of these seats, I will mention that it does seem like the seat cushion over here is a little bit short for an average sized human. Now, I'm 5'9". I'm not tall by any means, but it feels like my knees are a good couple inches beyond the end of the seat cushion. So as you can see over here, I've got probably about 4 or 5 inches between where my knee bends and where the seat ends. And even though it's not a big deal, especially because these seats are so comfortable, it would have been nice to either have a thigh extender or just make the seat a little bit longer, because the rear seats are actually a little bit better than the front seats, oddly enough. You have a little bit more thigh support over here. See, my knees probably got about 2 inches over here versus 3 or 4 inches in the front row. And I think a part of the reason they did that is because they do claim that the Nissan Altima has the best in class front legroom. And they likely measure that from the end of the seat to the front of the dashboard. And so in order to get those couple extra inches, they may have shortened the seat cushion, but honestly, I would have preferred them to just make a slightly longer seat cushion and maybe not have the best in class legroom for the front row, but make it a little bit more comfortable. Now, for the fifth and final thing that I hate about the Altima has to do with this fake looking carbon fiber trim. And Nissan admits this is kind of a quasi looking carbon fiber, and the fact that they're saying this is quasi carbon fiber already makes it feel a little bit tackier. I mean, you have a little bit of a design to it, but it almost feels like it's just a vinyl wrap, something you would do in the aftermarket over like a plastic panel. It has no texture to it. It doesn't really look at all like carbon fiber, aside from this little weave or these little rectangles that you can see on the screen. Overall, I just think it looks a little bit on the cheaper end, and I would have preferred them to add maybe even piano black plastic or a little bit more of this aluminum that you see on the door panel and you kind of see right below this fake carbon fiber. It would have been nice to have some sort of textured material here as well. So something a little bit different than what they included is what I would have preferred. Even though I know some people like this fake carbon fiber look, I just think it kind of stretches it, especially for an entry-level mid-size sedan. To have carbon fiber is essentially pointless. It's pointless in a lot of different cars, but let alone a mid-size sedan. Maybe even a fake-looking wood may have looked better than this fake carbon fiber, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about this faux carbon fiber down in the comments below. Well, there you have it, folks. That was 6 things that I love and 5 things that I think could be improved on the 2023 Nissan Altima. Overall, I've actually been very impressed with this vehicle. It was probably one of the biggest surprises because I expected this to be just another day-to-day boring vehicle. But with this SR VC-Turbo, it actually is pretty fun to drive and makes the daily commute a little bit funner than you would expect from an entry-level mid-size sedan. But let me know what you guys think of the Nissan Altima. Maybe you have one in your driveway. What do you love? What do you not love? And leave that down in the comments below, because I think it would be helpful for anybody in the market for one of these vehicles. If this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly videos. Also find me in all the social media down in the description below at Schwazy_. And as always, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.